This video has become more than what I originally expected to be, and I'll explain why next here on No Buts About It. What's up, everyone? Welcome to No Buts About It. I am Josh Butts, and today I wanted to talk about the poison pill because this is something that I didn't know existed. Maybe you did, but as I was researching for this video and making sure I had all the details correct and looking into how often this has been used, there was another story that I found that I thought was really neat and that a lot of people may not know about or even remember. I know I didn't know about it. So that's what we're going to explore. But first, let's explore what the poison pill is now, and then we'll look at what it was in the past. And the reason we're going to look at that is because of something Adam Schefter tweeted yesterday that I think actually went a little bit underreported. Micah Parsons' trade to the Packers included a poison pill clause that the Cowboys inserted to block a deal in the near future to the Eagles. Now, let's explain that real quick. What does that mean? How does that work? Well, so essentially what the Packers were, or what the Cowboys were able to do was when they traded Micah Parsons to the Packers, they said, you can trade him, you can have him, but you cannot trade him to any NFC East team that isn't the Dallas Cowboys this season or in 2026, or you are owed, they owe the Dallas Cowboys the 2028 first-round pick. Now, of course, the Packers aren't going to just agree to this blindly. So this also is included for Kenny Clark. So if the Cowboys were to trade Kenny Clark, say after this season, they want to move on from Kenny Clark, they trade him to the Vikings, they would owe the Green Bay Packers their 2028 first-round pick. And this, according to my research, this is a very rare thing. The last time this happened was actually the Packers did this with the Jets when they traded Brett Favre. Brett Favre, he went to the Packers and he went to the Jets, and they were afraid that he would get traded to the Vikings. Now, of course, we know eventually what happened. He ended up on the Vikings. But in an attempt to avoid that occurring, the Packers did include in their trade with the Jets what is called a poison pill clause. And this makes sense because Howie Roseman just keeps doing Howie Roseman things. And this is obviously a controversial type clause limiting what players can look at if they request a trade. Like if Micah Parsons were to request a trade after the Packers, not saying that's going to happen, but after the season with the Packers, maybe he's just like, I don't want to be here. He wouldn't realistically be able to look at the Bears, the Vikings, or the Lions. And we know, he wouldn't be able to look at the Eagles, the Commanders, or the Giants. Kenny Clark wouldn't be able to look at the Bears, the Vikings, or the Lions. What else does this do? This also means that the Packers and the Cowboys, there's so many teams here, the Packers and the Cowboys can't trade their 2028 first-round pick. That is already used in this hypothetical situation. So if the Cowboys wanted to go out and trade for another big player, maybe they were looking for a big pass rusher this season, they wouldn't be able to use that 2028 first-round pick. So that's why this clause is so important. And I didn't know that this even existed. I didn't know that teams could use this. I didn't know they could do this. And so I was researching this and trying to figure out how often this happens. And according to my research, again, it's not that often, although it is interesting. But I think I found something else that is interesting as well. And that's what's going to make up the rest of this video and how we kind of led into that. So there was another thing called a poison pill clause back before the 2001 or 2011 collective bargaining agreement with the NFLPA came out. And these poison pill clauses were used in the offer sheets for NFL restricted free agents. Now, this is a separate situation. This doesn't have to do with a trade. And the reason these got outlawed was because of a huge story, and that's this story that I discovered. So, going to set up some context. The Seattle Seahawks had just paid Walter Jones, a future Hall of Famer, future, one of the best to ever play O-line. He was a great player. At the time, he was, I believe, only getting paid $50 million a year. That's how crazy contracts have gotten in the last couple of years. Hall of Famer, offensive tackle for the Seattle Seahawks. And so they paid Walter Jones, and the Seahawks had said that after the NFL draft, they were going to negotiate with another Hall of Fame guard, Steve Hutchinson. Now, these negotiations broke down. They didn't end up negotiating with him. They didn't get an extension done. So they put a transition tag on it. Now, if you don't know what a transition tag, that's slightly different from a franchise tag. A franchise tag pretty much guarantees another year of service, because to trade for someone on the franchise tag, it takes 2 first-round picks. But a transition tag allows someone to go out and get offers from other teams, but that team that currently has that player as the restricted free agent has the chance to match that offer. And that's an important detail, and we'll get to that here in a minute. So Steve Hutchinson goes out, and he goes and talks to the Vikings. And the Vikings make an offer. And they make an offer that says, we will pay you, I believe it was 7 seasons, $49 million. But there was a catch. And this was this poison pill clause. If another offensive lineman in the entire NFL made more than Hutchinson in any one season, the entire deal would be guaranteed. Now, why is this a catch? Well, remember, they just paid Walter Jones $50 million a year. And the Seahawks have to match the Vikings' offer, which would include that clause. So eventually, at some point, Steve Hutchinson, no matter how you laid out the contract, Steve Hutchinson was going to make less than Walter Jones. And so his contract would have to be fully guaranteed. That was what the Vikings did to trick, or to kind of guarantee that Seattle wouldn't be able to match that offer. So the Minnesota Vikings did this to the Seahawks, and the Seahawks weren't too happy about it. So the Seahawks did something of their own with Vikings wide receiver Nate Burleson. Yeah, this guy that you see on CBS Mornings, see him on various NFL shows, hosting game shows, that Nate Burleson. Before he was that guy, he was doing this. He was playing football. Played for the Lions, the Vikings, Seahawks eventually, and you're going to see why here in a second. Seahawks aren't happy. The Seahawks created a clause for Nate Burleson, who was also a restricted free agent, that said if Burleson played 5 or more games in Minnesota in one season, his contract would be guaranteed. Now, that's a great deal for Seattle, right? Because they're not going to play in Minnesota for more than 5 games in a season. That's not going to happen. But for Minnesota, it will. And obviously, as we've just established, they have to match that. So that's essentially guaranteeing his contract if he stays. And assuming he is healthy, if he plays 5 home games for the Minnesota Vikings, his contract is guaranteed. Now, this, of course, led to, a behind walls, sometimes in the public, spitting match between these two teams. They're fighting, and eventually these two clauses got banned because it kind of resulted in players being just used as pawns, and it wasn't really helpful for the players. It wasn't helpful for the league. It was just a stupid thing that was happening. And as you can tell, these clauses were getting oddly specific and just weren't helpful for anyone. So those did get banned. So it'll be interesting to see if the Micah Parsons poison pill clause, which is separate from the offer sheets clauses, if those types of clauses will be able to stand. I'll be interested to see if we see more of them in the future for these star players. Micah Parsons obviously being one of the top pass rushers in the NFL. They don't want him to go to the Philadelphia Eagles, where he's from. Dallas Cowboys made sure he wouldn't. But that's just a quick little, just pointing something out about what happened with Micah Parsons, but also a brief history lesson on the NFL and something that happened. That's cool. I would have wanted to share that with you guys. Did you guys know that happened? Let me know if you knew about that already down below. Let me know if you know of any other instances where a poison pill clause was used in a trade. I could only find the Brett Favre and then, of course, the Micah Parsons situations. But let me know down below. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. It only takes you 5 seconds, but it is so, so helpful for me. This video is not sponsored, so any help the viewers give us is appreciated. Thank you once again, and until next time, go do something nice for someone.